Hey everyone. In this video, and it might take two depending on how many footnotes are in here, we're going to look at one of the first of several scholarly articles of different types. We're going to look at a history article, a science one. This one is in the area of education, sort of more of a research study, and walk you through how to go about reading articles in these different fields. So let's begin. When you first pull up an article, you'll have all the information, publication information, right? And we know that on some of the databases, they will provide a citation for you. So this one's called Exploring Literacy in Our Own Backyard, Increasing Teenagers' Understanding of Literacy Access Through Community Mapping. And we have our author there, and a lot of other information that's not really useful to us. And as we go through, you'll have access to the PDF of this as well, so you can look at it more slowly. You'll see information highlighted in red with a footnote, and at the bottom of each page that footnote is explained. So that's kind of what I'm going to do, is walk through this study and sort of explain what's going on. So in this particular article, we don't have any kind of abstract or summary that tells us what the article is about. Sometimes you have that, sometimes you don't. Your introduction in an educational article usually places a story that they're working on in context. So what is it that they personally are trying to do in the study based on experiences they've had in the classroom or in their particular school, etc. So some educational environment. So our second footnote here tells us that there is a research question that's going to be addressed. So you kind of go down to, and what's helpful in a lot of these scholarly articles is you'll have sections called introduction, right? You'll have a section called theoretical perspectives, a section called discussion. So that makes it a little easier to go through and find the information you need. So what we're going to do is see the objective of this article is to encourage teachers to first investigate the communities they wish to educate, become more aware of what resources are there. And they're also encouraged to implement strategies to augment those literacy resources that are available. So this one is more of a what we call a qualitative look at the subject rather than a quantitative, and those are terms we'll talk about later. But in general, a quantitative research study is looking at hard data, things that can be counted, statistics and that sort of thing. Qualitative can be interviews, surveys, things like that are not necessarily things that are going to be counted. All right, so what you'll often have then in a social sciences sort of paper is that you'll have the author of the paper actually telling you in what theoretical context they're writing, what perspective that they're writing from. So they're putting themselves and their study within a context of other studies to see where this one lands. All right, so she goes through and tells us all about the other. And we sometimes call this a literature review as well, depending on how the writer has set his paper up. So a literature review would say, here is everything else that's written on this subject, and here is how my ideas line up against what everybody else is saying. A research study will often have a methodology section, and this is where they set up how they're going to approach their research, how they collected the research, and how they're going to use it. So if they're going to be out in the field doing field work, like this particular study, they'll also describe the setting and the people that they're going to be working with. And this section is on the data collection itself, how the person went about gathering information. And then we move down to the results section. Okay, so what were the results of this study? And for this particular study, the researcher presented 5 results. So in each section is its own, each result is in its own section. Okay, so and I mentioned that there is quantitative and qualitative research as you go through this study. This researcher used both. All right, so here's each one has its own heading. So as you go through the first reading, look at the headings. Right? Look at the title, abstract or summary if there is one, and then breeze through and see where all the headings are. And you can kind of mark those if that makes it easier. You can highlight in different colors or whatever. So these results you would probably want to mention when you're writing the summary that I'm asking you to write. You would probably say, what is the study? And what were some of the results, right? That's how you would organize your summary, and go through and look to see if there's any headings that set up the essay that way, and that can help you find things more quickly. All right, and you don't really even have to read all of this, right? This is just examples of that result. So this result was talking about the target audience. To whom are the literacy resources environmental print directed? So she went through and looked at what kind of libraries were around, what access they had to buying books and to free books, and then that's the explanation. But then she gives you all this background supporting evidence that she gathered while she was doing her research. So it's not always important to read all of the examples unless you're going to be using these examples for something on your own. Otherwise, you're just looking at these main headings and seeing what the results are. All right? And you'll notice that these are very long articles, right? Because lots taking place in them. You'll come across a lot of tables, and tables usually have their names at the top, and the headings and information down the side. Remember, your images have that caption information underneath like we've practiced doing, but tables usually put it at the top. All right, so read through the tables and see what they have to say. And let's see. Then in a study, you'll often find not only a conclusion that sort of sums up everything, but also tells you either how these results can be used to accomplish something, or what kind of follow-up studies can be would be useful based on what she's done. What could we do to follow up with that? Or what are some limitations? What could not have been done in the study that maybe somebody else could do? What are some suggestions for other studies that could be done? That usually shows up at the end. And let's see, we're familiar with referencing the figures, right? Figures 1 and 2 demonstrate, and put those as close to your figures as possible, and see your figures have the captions underneath like you're used to. All right, and more tables that are helpful, and then all the references. A lot of these articles you look at are social science articles, and you'll see that they're in APA, which is a style format you'll learn in English 112. You won't learn that in English 111. So that's why their sources look different than yours. Okay? So I hope that's enough to get you started in reading a social sciences article.